2, and we are officially live. Apologize for the late start, guys, but we had a little bit of Wi-Fi issues because we're dealing with international hustlers here. We got Jory in Puerto Rico. We got Franklin in the MIA 305. Welcome, guys.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, how's it going, Franklin, man? Nice to meet you. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to meet you too, Joey.
This is a podcast we've been trying to put together for a minute. I've been on Franklin for since last year, but my man's
Probably
been
longer than that.
flipping
I've been
land.
running away from it, man. I've been trying to duck and dodge it, but I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Pay my debt to society.
we gotta pay it forward. We gotta let people know what the secret is. We got obviously people listening to us from all over, but you've been killing the land game for a minute now, and I know
Yeah.
you're pretty much doing it all over Florida or in South Florida.
Actually, primarily just South Florida, but I actually just acquired my first out of South Florida deal up in Palm Bay, which is roughly probably I'd like to say maybe 45 minutes northeast of Orlando.
Yeah,
The lots up there are a lot cheaper than they are down here. So that's my first one. We're actually scheduled to close this Friday.
very nice. All right, we'll get
Nice,
into
nice.
all that. We'll get into
Yeah.
all that. Before we get into the land game, why don't we start with how'd you even get into real estate and what ended up veering you into investing and then eventually into focusing on the niche of land?
All right. So the first half of the question, I actually got into real estate when I was younger. My interest kind of peaked into it when one of the members at my church where I grew up at one time, they were the one of the deacons or something like that. He was in the real estate, and I kind of heard him talk about it, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. And I always liked the aspect of kind of being your own boss. I had a problem with authority figures, so I didn't like. I was never one to be. I didn't like to be told what to do, and I like the independency that business and that how
The
you call it,
career.
career. There you go. That career provided.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of made me get into real estate, and what kind of got me into the land, bro. I just kind of just stumbled across it. I started doing just traditional real estate when I first got my license. Just started doing traditional real estate, and then I got a taste of the wholesaling. Then I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. That sounds like something I wanted to do. So then I got into doing just straight wholesaling deals, wholesaling single family homes and stuff like that. And then I just came across a land deal one time. I was like, dog, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? I don't know anybody that want to buy land. Majority of the investors that I work with, all they want is single family. So I acquired the land deal. The guy told me, listen, this I want to sell it. And I'm like, well, it's land, it's probably only worth, pennies. So we came to terms on the price. And then I started when I got the deal under contract, I never really did any homework on the buyers or who to sell it to. And then when I started shopping it around and doing the numbers, I'm like, whoa, I can sell this thing for a lot of money. And actually, my first land deal, I made 50,000 from it.
Nice,
Okay.
nice, nice.
Yeah,
And from
Nice.
that point forward, you were like, I'm gonna start looking for some more land.
yeah. From that point forward, I never looked back.
Nice. And do you still do traditional real
No,
estate?
I don't do traditional. I actually any traditional that I have, I kind of just pitch them off to one of the realtors here that I'm close with at the office. Like
Nice.
I even had
Yeah,
people at
when
my
you say
church that
traditional,
say, hey, I want to sell my house or whatever like that. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put you down with somebody that could help you out. I'm a licensed realtor, but it's just that I don't have time to do the everyday traditional stuff with when it comes to clients, as far as go out looking for buyers or doing showings and stuff like that.
yeah, I feel I'm in the same boat. I'm a licensed broker, and I don't do anything traditional. You know, I'll just pass it off to somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, maybe do a couple of deals I find on myself on the market, but besides that, we're not doing any kind of broker of any deals.
Yeah, exactly.
We got Nathan Woods here from St. Louis. He saw our notes video and he loved that. The goal here, Franklin too. Here we got Manuel from Oklahoma City giving a shout out. We want people to reach out, and Franklin, I'm sure you're looking to expand and start doing these type of land deals in different places. So
of course,
hopefully, they'll listen to your story, they'll listen to the golden nuggets you'll drop, and then they'll reach out and connect with you, and you can start doing JVs, you know, with our network and start expanding to nationwide with what you know, because that's the premise of this show, really. That's why we put it out. We want our community, and we'll put you in the Facebook group too. We want our community to learn all the different sides of investing, and then as they get their feet wet, reach out to, you know, people like us that are doing these type of deals, whether it's note investing or land deals, and start bringing the deals to the table so that we can kind of guide them and mentor them and partner on these deals together. So just so you know, probably after this show, once we put you in that Facebook group, there'll be a lot of people reaching out. So you might want to start brushing up on your US-based research.
Most definitely. That'd be awesome. Appreciate that.
Now, I mean, so you said you're doing, you know, mostly land deals. So you're wholesaling land deals. Are you buying it and flipping them? You know, what kind of what you doing right now?
Majority of the stuff I do is wholesale. I was actually fortunate enough to get with a developer. One of my partners that I actually work with when it comes to wholesaling, his brother actually develops. So that was kind of like a match made in heaven. So starting last year at the fourth quarter of last year, I kind of got my foot wet and got more involved into the development aspect, because honestly, coming into real estate, that was always my end all be all. That's like my capitalistic dream was to be a developer. I wanted to one day be like a Lennar. You know, Lennar is like a big developer down here in South Florida, or where he builds like hundreds of homes, like in communities and stuff, and even getting into the multifamily aspect where I could buy like an acre of land or 2-3 acres of land and put like 100 units on there. So that was always my dream. So of course, with every dream that you have to start somewhere, and you have to do baby steps. And of course, my baby steps started when I started acquiring the land and wholesaling it. So now, like I said, starting last year, at the fourth quarter of last year, I got involved with my partner's brother, where he kind of put me on his shoulder, or took me by the hand and be like, okay, so this is the breakdown, this is the process. Once you buy the land, you need an architect, you got to draw the plans, you got to go through permitting, you got to break ground, so on and so forth. So I'm learning more and more as far as that aspect. So
cool. I know one thing, we all get, if you're wholesaling in general at all, you get those vacant lot, you get those land deals, right? Those leads that come through, and a lot of people just throw them away, right? Because they just don't know how to source them, they don't know how to do the numbers on them. So I guess kind of go through your first land deal, how that came about, and just kind of that transaction, kind of give us some breakdown on that.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, like my first land deal, it literally came by because I remember, because all I did was just focus on single family. And I think I just gradually one day just seen somebody that says that that you could wholesale land too. So I found a property that just like literally that I found the land. It was a land deal. I contacted the owner at first. I couldn't get in contact with the owner. I contacted their son, and I was like, yeah, I want to know if you guys would be interested in selling. And he was like, well, I don't know. I'll pass your info to my father, and I guess if he wants to, he'll contact you. So, and that was just like something I just threw in the air, but I never really paid any attention, and I kind of left it on the side. Then literally like months later, it could have been maybe even a year later, some guy just hit me up and like, hey, yeah, you spoke to my son. You said that you're interested in the property. And I'm like, yeah, what kind of property is it? How big is the house? What's the square footage? And you're like, no, it's a land. I'm like, land? I'm like, okay. So tell me more about it. Give me the information. So then he started telling me there was a house on there. The house was demolished by the city. It has some liens on there and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, let me take a look at it. And then, the land was actually, are you familiar with Miami at all?
Yeah, I just left Miami. I was in Miami
Oh,
for 5 years. Yeah, I've been
oh,
I've been
okay.
going to Miami since 2004. I know
Okay, yeah.
Miami.
So this particular land was actually in the where Hialeah meets Miami Lakes area. So
That's
you know
Kevin.
that's
That's Kevin's town. Kevin's the
yeah,
mayor of that area.
yeah, exactly. So that's so if you know that's a really good area. You know the homes over there go for a lot of money, especially now. But you know this was probably like 3 years ago when I got into this deal. So 3 years ago, like so literally, I was able to go under contract for the land like at $35,000.
Mm.
I was able to go under contract for the land. And then, like I said, I didn't know anything about it. So now I got the property, I acquired the property. Now it's a matter of finding a potential investor for it. So then I just started
Right,
shopping.
I got two questions before we keep going with
Go ahead.
this case study. When you first saw the piece of land, how did you identify it? Was it on a list you pulled of land? Did you see it on Zillow? What was kind of the initial hunt? Do you even remember?
Yeah, so this was the beginning of my wholesaling, so when I first started wholesaling, which is I recommend this to anybody that's looking to get into wholesaling. The first thing I actually did when I actually did this for like a year straight was Bird Dog, was driving for dollars. So that's how I first initially acquired my land, and that's how I acquired majority of the properties I did when I first got into to wholesaling. So I just acquired it through driving for
Driving
dollars.
by.
What was the second part? What was the second part of the question?
And then when you saw it, you drove by. What, there was a phone number on the piece of land, or that you just looked up the address?
Yeah, so I looked up the address. Well, there was no address, so I looked up to the address of the neighboring property. And then when I went on, and all this was on the public records, our county's public records. So I went to the county's public records, public property appraisal, and I looked up the address, the neighboring address, and I found the lot right next to it. And then I have a system that I use, a program that I use called BinVerified, BinVerified.com. And that's a program I use to find individual property owners, individuals numbers. So it's not like a mass search, like a batch skip tracing or something like that. It's just individual search. So I looked up their names, the owners' names, and then I was able to locate the son, like I said, the son, and then the son gave my info to the father.
Nice.
Real quick,
And then
one quick.
sorry, Jake, when you got it under contract for 35,000, how did you know to run numbers, comps, or did you just say, all right, let me get it under contract at that price point and figure it out?
So how I ran my comps, by seeing what comparable properties, i.e. lots, sold for in that area. And I seen a lot that sold that sold for, I think, $65,000. That sold for $65,000 to, but this lot was a less desirable place than where my lot was. And I found out who bought the property, and I actually contacted the owners, or I contacted that company that purchased that property for $65,000, and I pitched them my property, and they said they were interested in it.
Got it. Yeah, that was my question too, was how you came up with the price. So
all right, so when you saw that there was somebody who bought a lot that wasn't even as good as the one you're negotiating for 65,000, you said 35,000 sounds good because there's a 30,000 spread right there, and I'm already going to plan to contact the person who bought that one to see if they want another one. So that was the whole strategy from the beginning.
Correct.
Did they end up being the buyers?
That was exactly.
Hello? We got you cut off there for a second. Did they end up being the buyers for it?
Yes, so they did end up being the buyers, and that was like one of my first, not like when that was my first lot deal. And but majority of the deals that I did come up to, they were like, my assignment fee from those are usually like anywhere between $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. So I did an assignment because I ended up selling the lot for $85,000. So like I said, I made a profit of $50,000 on that one deal, and I assigned it. the seller wasn't too happy. The buyer wasn't too happy about that. So I learned from that.
Yeah, we got Wi-Fi issues.
Yeah. I was gonna say though, one cool point he mentioned was just something that a lot of people don't do, right? He found a buyer who bought one for $65,000, and that's your first buyer you should contact right there, right? So many times we see this house sold that you put for comps, but you never actually contact that investor or that buyer to say, hey, I got this house down the street from yours. Would you be open to buying it, right? So I mean that's the main key that I think we miss a lot of times.
Yeah, and it's because I think you get caught up in saying, all right, let me start posting it in the Facebook groups, let me blast my list, let me call the investors that I've had a relationship with, that I've spoken to. You start going down your dispo checklist, right? Do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that, and then it's like, wait a minute, I've spent a couple days doing my dispo checklist, but have I even bothered looking at the owners of the comps that I used to figure this out? And have I skip traced their information to be able to just have a simple conversation? Because 9 out of 10 times, those are the best buyers, simply because if they bought something similar to what you have and they've had a good experience, you kind of want more of that all day, every day. And you're begging for someone to come knocking on your door saying, hey, I know you've bought 3 deals just like this in this neighborhood. You want another one? It's like the fantasy of every investor. I wish right now somebody will walk through this door and say, hey, you've been buying, I got another one for you. That's no marketing money for me. And that's what people think, that I wouldn't want to pay an assignment fee. Yeah. Well, why wouldn't I pay? I just literally paid a $40,000 assignment fee on the property that I closed on, that was right here by the office. The one that the city was giving me a ton of issues with. We closed on it a couple months ago. I paid $40,000 assignment fee on it.
Yeah. The price made sense, right? I mean, if somebody brings you a deal, most of the time, okay, you bring me a deal, this is the price, these are the terms, I'm going to evaluate it off that price and that terms, right? I can't be mad about what you got the property for, but we would love that, because like you said, that's zero marketing on your site, right? You didn't pay for that text blast or that cold call or that direct mail, right? That's somebody who said, hey, Kevin just bought this property, I'm going to go meet Kevin, So Franklin, you're back. So what we were saying, we were pointing out how it's so important to go find those buyers that buy similar properties where you got that property at, right? A lot of time people don't even reach out to a buyer that might have bought a house down the street. They look at their whole, dispo checklist. They hit up their buyers list, where there's so many buyers right there in that area that you should call first. And I assume with vacant land, which is even more of a niche, a niche market, it's probably more important in that niche market to find out who's buying vacant land.
Exactly. Can you guys hear me? I'm not sure if you can.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, if you could get a little closer.
I got the AirPods on. Let's see.
Now, Franklin, after you did that first deal, you marked it up all the way to $85,000. How'd you come up with your selling price?
So as I stated, I came up with the selling price seeing from what that other property sold for. I think the property, because remember that same company that I sold it to, they purchased the comparable property, which was a lot smaller than mine. So that's what I based it on. Because my property, I think, was bigger by 2,000 square feet. Because the property that I had was, I think, a 10,000 square foot lot, and that property they had was only an 8,000 square foot lot, and plus it was more, like I said, you guys are familiar with the area. Because my property was at where Miami Lakes and Hialeah meet. That property was more on the Miami Garden side, so less desirable area. So I instantly kind of put like, well, if that property sold for this amount, I could potentially get this amount for it. So of course, and how I always do it, I always kind of shoot for the moon and let them talk me down. So I initially offered them the 80,000. 85,000, thinking they're going to try to renegotiate, but they evidently liked it that much. They ain't even renegotiate it. So they already know where they need to be at as far as the construction cost and building everything. So they're like, you know what, that number makes sense for us. We'll pay that price for it.
Perfect.
And it was zoned for what type of build?
Single family.
Nice.
That's
All
nice.
right.
Zone single family.
That was up. See if you could check your settings and put your AirPods on as the mic, because I don't think it's using your AirPods as the mic. I don't see that setting. But in the meantime, you got your first deal. You made 50K, probably more than you've ever made on any wholesale deal, because you said you were averaging 5 to 15 grand. You got your first taste of a land deal. From that point forward, what was the mindset? What was the strategy? And how did you start doing more land deals? And how'd you get to where you are right now? Like, as far as the business model, the marketing strategy, and building your relationships with your buyers.
Is that better? Can you guys hear me better?
It's a little better.
Yeah.
All right. So from that point on, it kind of just I kind of just, since I was like, wow, I made this much from a land deal, let me start pivoting and focusing my time and energy and effort into acquiring more land deal. And especially back then, like you said, it is a niche market. So not a lot of people were doing it, or not as much people were doing it as opposed to the single family market aspect. So I just started more so just focusing on acquiring land deals as opposed to the single family.
Yeah.
And like literally, so furthermore, your question, Kev, I just started calling more and more potential sellers, as well as more and more potential investors. You know, and it's
Did you
funny that
actually
even with
start
real estate,
pulling? You started pulling lists and stuff like that, or is it still all driving for dollars?
at that point, since I was doing land, what I transferred over to is just using the property appraisal, which I still do now, which is kind of prehistoric, and I really need to get away from because it lessens my quality. I mean not quality, but my quantity. Because all I really do is just go on the property appraisals. Because on the property appraisals, you could see if there's a house, if it's a house, or if it's a vacant land. So of course, I just click on the vacant land, see who owns it, how long they owned it for, and call them and see if they would be interested in selling it.
Got it. So right now today, are you like super hyper focused on strictly vacant land, or you're like marketing the vacant land and the homes and just seeing what you get?
I'm I'm still kind of focusing more on vacant land. If anything, more so now, I'm kind of expanding my reach, sort of say. That's why I said I just touched bases on Bay, and I'll probably even look over in the Tampa area, or maybe even outside of Florida itself, and go to Georgia and stuff like that. I do feel as if I found a niche in that, and I'm still trying to see where that will sit, because I've spoken, like I have a mentor that I speak with, and he kind of told me I'm kind of limiting myself when it comes
Mhm.
to just the vacant land. But where I find to be more successful with me, I don't do the quantity, where like if I were to go completely virtual wholesaling, I find that I'm able to stay afloat, sort of stay in this market, is going for quality. So like literally, I could probably come into the office and not only make, you know 20 phone calls or something like that to get to a couple of sellers. And some people might say that's crazy. I'm making 200 phone calls a day. You're 20 phone calls, but my 20 phone calls, as opposed to just like, if I try the name and I can't find the name, move on to the next one. I look for the name. If I can't find the name, I try to find a kin, I try to find an associate, and eventually that leads me to the person that then tells me they're interested in selling. So, I can literally spend like 15, 20 minutes on one search, where somebody will call, 30 people within that 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Got it.
no. Let me ask you a question, Franklin. What are some of the challenges on land deals and negotiations and getting the deal done that you've learned along the way?
Two biggest things I could say I learned along the way is, especially here in Miami-Dade County, is a lot of land has a lot of leads, a lot of leads. And as you guys can see, the growth of Miami is crazy right now. We're getting a lot of new people coming down here. I think I read an article the other day. They said there's 1,000 new people coming down to South Florida, I think, a day, which is crazy. So with that being said, I think the city in itself is trying to capitalize in that because they see majority of these people that are acquiring these lands are not end users but are investors. So like there's no rule of thumb to this, so nobody hold me to this figure or this equation, but I've just kind of noticed from the liens that some of the developers I worked with that were able to get them mitigated down to, they more or less stay around the 30 to 40% range. So if a property has $100,000 worth of liens on there, more or less they can get that mitigated and negotiated down to 30 or 40%. So mind you, if it's $100,000, 40% is $40,000, which is honestly a lot, especially if the land is only worth $50,000. So you have to still take care of the liens and the violations, and sometimes most of those with liens and violations, they have unpaid taxes, and you still have to peak the seller's interest to sell. You know, they're not going to give it to you for free. Anything you're going to make, so you have to. It has to be enough to where it makes sense for them to sell, and also it has to be enough to make enough sense for me to make some money, and as well as for the developer that I wholesale it to, for them to make some money. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Another challenge that I find is, well, it's something else. It's not really a challenge, but it's something that I've learned when it comes to land. It's something called impact fees. Is something. So what that is impact fees and soft costs. So once you acquire a land, you instantly have to tack on automatically the $30,000 for the developer's aspect. They consider that into the purchase of the land because they instantly, before they do anything, they have $30,000 on that property. What's that $30,000 broken down to? $30,000 that is broken down to the impact fees, permitting, architect, and engineering for the property. Architect and engineering for the property could be anywhere between $3,000 to $6,000. Permit fees can be anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000, and impact fees are anywhere between $12,000 to $15,000. And what impact fees are what the same way how when you pay for like the schools, the parks, the police departments, and all this other stuff. What initiates that tax cost for that vacant land that you are going to put structure on there. So that's like your first blow. That's like your quote. You could consider that's your first quote unquote taxes.
I got you. You were cutting off there. I don't know if the Wi-Fi is starting to trip where you're at, but to kind of reiterate for those that had trouble hearing you when you were cutting off, you're finding that every deal, the developers you're talking to that are planning to build on it, they're pretty much tacking on this market about $30,000 of what they call impact fees. And what else did you mention? Oh, architect. They gotta get the architects.
Yeah, and all that under the umbrella of soft cost. So that's soft. There's soft cost of construction and there's hard cost of construction. Soft cost is what I said. The impact fees, the permitting, the architect. That's the soft cost, and the hard cost is what it's going to take to actually construct the property.
Right. So permitting, architect, and then the impact fees is what you're saying is goes towards the neighborhood, the policing, all the kind of like your first round of property taxes is kind of like the idea behind it. So every time you're dealing with a possible buyer and they're looking at your price point, they're taking a look at the liens and violations, which is something common on land deals because people are not paying taxes on it. A lot of the times the lots are kind of abandoned, and that's why they're interested in selling them off because they haven't really done anything with it. So they kind of stop paying their taxes and anything else that's associated with that. Is that kind of the common situation?
Correct. That's exactly correct. So and a majority of the liens are for lot maintenance. And lot maintenance, because it's an empty lot, so people, what they often do, they dump on the lots. You know, and it's a sucky situation because you would think that the city would be lenient because you could tell them that, listen, I just acquired the property. It had nothing to do with the garbage and debris that's on there. But like I said, because they know that you're acquiring the property for profit, they try to capitalize on that as well.
Right. So you're finding that the negotiations on these lot maintenance violations is around 30 to 40% of whatever the fines are. So the violations are anywhere between 100,000. In that scenario, the person's paying, the buyer that's buying it from you has to say, all right, my plans need to involve paying $30,000, $30 to $40,000 of the fines. If the violations are 100,000 on average, I got to put $30,000 between soft costs on top of it. So I'm already 60 grand into this. If you're selling me the property, let's say for another 80 grand, so now I'm in this property. Is it still going to make sense once I put my hard cost of the actual construction to be able to turn a profit? Am I looking at the numbers correctly, Franklin?
Yes, and so that is correct. So pretty much that all falls under after repair value or the estimated price to sell. That's how you evaluate if it makes sense or not. So now with that same scenario, if you could sell a house, if you could sell a house for 400 plus, that makes sense because you have enough meat on the bone to do it. But if the house is only sell for like 350 or even less than that, then you kind of have to go back to either the seller try to get a reduction, or you would be betting on the city mitigating the liens even lower, which that could be like a hit and miss.
Now we're talking in the building homes space, correct? The residential side of it. We're not talking about commercial bills.
No, that's all residential. And the funny thing is the impact fees. This is just impact fees. When it comes to commercials or even residential multifamily, you have to pay impact fees for each door.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you're building a duplex unit, you're paying impact fees for all 4 doors.
Yeah, you're paying impact fees for all 4 doors. The only thing that'll stay the same, is your architectural and your permitting. Those would be that's a one-time fee. Because say for instance, if you're building a 4-unit, you're going to submit your plans for an architect to draw you up a plans for a 4-unit. Now, but the only thing is the price of that is going to go up because for a single family, like I said, single family plans will be anywhere between $3,000 to $6,000 to draw up. But for a multi-family, your plans will probably be anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 to draw up. But that's just the plans, and then the permitting, and that's only a one-time fee. The permitting would be a one-time fee too. Is you're paying your permits for your construction, so that's the one-time fee. The only thing that you would have to pay multiple of is how many units that you're building. So if you're building 4 units, that $12,000 to $15,000 impact fee, you would have to pay that 4 times.
Got it. And this is the end buyer. You're talking about if I'm wholesaling this land, you kind of have to have these numbers in your head to figure out the price to lock it up with your seller, correct? Because your end buyer is paying all these extra fees on top of it, right? And you had mentioned earlier that you did, you ran into a developer contact, and I would assume if you're focusing on land, developers are, that's a good group of people to know. So if I'm a new investor and I'm seeing land deals popping on my list, and instead of throwing them away, I want to kind of wholesale these land deals. What's the best way for a new investor to reach out to find some developer clients that might be looking for potential land?
So the best way to do that is to kind of work backwards. And backwards is the same way you go. The forwards way is acquiring a property. Like you would see, like I said, like driving, like say for instance, you're driving for dollars, or you list of properties that people are looking to sell. So you see what they're selling for. You see, or you contact the sellers and see, listen, this is how much you want to sell your properties for. So when it comes to acquiring developers or even buyers, you kind of work backwards. You see, as opposed to seeing what people sell their properties for, you would see people purchase properties for. So that way, you'll look in the area, especially for land. Now you would look on, like, say for instance, if you're running your comps, whether it be Zillow or the MLS or PropStream, or whatever the case is, you would then go on Zillow or MLS or PropStream. You would see the recently sold properties that were built at least within 3 years, 2017 or newer. And you would then see those would be your potential developers. You would see the companies that acquired those properties. You would see how much they acquired them for, and then from that way, because that'll help you guesstimate what the comp is. Because like if somebody's telling you they want to sell their property for $70,000, but you're seeing all the developers that recently picked up properties, they're buying them at $70,000. So that means you have to keep some meat on the bones for you. So that means the most you could pay for it is a minimum, at least 65 or 60,000. So you kind of work backwards from there. So to answer your question directly, you see what properties are either being sold or recently sold that were recently built at least 3 years.
Yeah, we got Mi Vida right here asking exactly that. He's from Phoenix, Arizona. He was asking how you're comping vacant land, and Franklin literally just broke it down. To recap, is he's looking at comparables for new construction builds within the last 3 years, and he's seeing what are the buyers for those lands and what they paid for, which you can see all this in public record. So if you see somebody who built a new construction 2 years ago in that same area, and you see who was the builder who bought it, they got to buy the land, and what that price point is, you got to be able to get it under contract for lower than that price point. And then you're probably contacting that same exact company to see if they're interested in buying another one. Am I right, Franklin?
Correct. You're absolutely correct. And that's the best way to go about doing that.
When you're looking at vacant land, you said you're paying attention to how long the seller has owned it. What is your mindset when you're seeing that number? What are you looking for?
So the cool thing with vacant land, unlike properties, like if you're looking at a single family home, if you see somebody just purchased a single family home 2 years ago, that's like a dead deal. So majority of the time, that's a dead deal. You usually want to go for people that's own their homes anywhere between, a good number is 10 years. That's a great number. So they utilize a lot of the time in the property. So they'll be a little more inclined to sell. Then you go into 7 and 5, and stuff like that. But for land, as long as they own the property, honestly, you could say as long as 1 year or 2 years is the ideal number. Because if they own the property for 2 years, and then you look on whether it be the street view and you see they haven't developed or anything like that, then that's a good sense that, okay, they purchased the property. Of course, they purchased the property developed. So there's more so of a reason why, whether it was, they ran into financial issues, they ran into permitting issues, whatever the case is. So they'll be a little more inclined to sell than somebody that would have purchased the land 2-3 months ago. So your window to when they purchase the property to when they would potentially want to sell is a lot smaller than it would be if it's a single family.
Definitely. As far as vacant land trends you're seeing right now, right? Like, how competitive is the market of other people out there flipping vacant land? The prices right now, I mean, I assume prices of everything are going up, but like, what kind of trends are you seeing in the vacant land market right now?
So that's dependent upon your particular market. Right now, us being in the South Florida market, it is crazy fire right here. Literally, you can't. I think on average, people that are acquiring single family homes, they're paying above appraised value for them only because the inventory is so low. So with that being said, a lot of people are edging more towards new construction. But sometimes too, because of the inventory is so low, people are like literally settling for things that they wouldn't even usually purchase. But it's just that, listen, for what I got approved for and for what I could get, I have to settle for this because there's nothing else out there. We've seen there's nothing else out there. So if I got a new construction that, you may have to pay a little more for it, but you're getting a new construction build. And the majority of the properties that I've been working with the developers, majority of the properties that they are building are for like the quote unquote first time home buyers. And what was taught to me by first time home buyers. First time home buyers, all they really care about if it's new and it looks good. The second time home buyers, they care more about space, location, and storage. To be uh, and I didn't realize that like a second time home buyer would be more so a client to look for a property with more cabinet space in the garage, more so than a first time home buyer where they don't care about cabinet space, they don't care about garage, they just want to make sure it looks good and it's new. So as once again to your question, it's like the market. I feel as it depends on your market. It depends on your specific market, and primarily for this market here in Florida, in Southwest Florida, it's Southeast Florida rather. The trend of the market is very hot when it comes to development and land acquisition.
Perfect.
We got Manuel's asking. He was driving around. He just ran into 5 acres in a C or D class neighborhood, right next to a mobile home park. Any suggestions on how to approach the seller when calling them? So Franklin, if you were in this situation, you drove by a mobile home park, you're in a C, D class neighborhood, you see 5 acres, you do your research, you're able to get a hold of the seller. What mindset approach, what strategy are you thinking in this type of a situation?
So in this type of situation, I would work once again. I would work backwards. So before contacting the seller, I would actually try to secure a potential buyer, unless I'm getting a great deal. Only because, especially for something like that, that is more of a niche thing. And also, you also got to see depending on the area, because I know when it comes out of to like the big metropolitan cities, a lot of these places, especially with that type of acreage, are undeveloped property. So it's just like here, like yeah, although we're in a metropolitan area, the Tri-County area, which is Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, if you go out west, there's still a lot of undeveloped areas, especially like if you go down South Florida to the Redlands and stuff like that, because they have 5 acres there. But the thing is, what's around there? You got to make sure that there's other established properties over there, because what developers will look for is where am I going to get water from, where am I going to get electricity from, where am I going to put the roads and stuff like that. So that's why I said you kind of, for that specific situation, you do have to kind of work backwards, or depending on the market, because I've seen like when it comes to Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, sometimes single family homes, they sit on acre lots. So if you're going to acquire, I mean, they sit on 5 acre lots. So if you're going to acquire the property, can you only put a single family there? So that kind of that's not really going to be attractive either, because most likely if you can put a single family on a 5 acre lot, you're probably anywhere between an hour or two away from the nearest metropolitan area. So you have to factor these things in as well. And also what that particular parcel of property allows you to build. So if you're on 5 acres of land, but all you can build is one single family home on there, that's not attractive. But if you're on a 5 acre piece of land and it allows you to build multifamily on there, that's something that's more attractive.
So you're paying attention to the zoning, you're paying attention to the city around to see what's there. You're kind of taking a look at the recent comparables of the lots. You're doing all this homework before calling the seller, so you have a good idea of what you can even potentially do with that property. And then you're actually piquing potential buyers to see if they're interested in something like that, so that you can have a price point and also someone who has a construction desire for that property, so you know how to approach it way before you even pick up the phone.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And that's the best way to work that specific deal. Unless you're familiar with the area and you're familiar with that lot size, and you see that other lot sizes usually sell, for that price. You know, if you're like, once again, you could go back as far as acquiring a buyer. If you're noticing that you've seen another 5-acre lot, a 7-acre lot, a 10-acre lot recently sold, then you could kind of gauge where your property needs to be. Say, for instance, if you see a 5-acre lot, depending on area, sold for $500,000. You know, just throwing out a random number. If you see it sold for $500,000 recently within the past year or so, now that kind of instantly tells you that, okay, maybe I could go to the seller and see if they'll sell it for $200,000 or $300,000 or $450,000, whatever the case is. And if anything, the person that recently purchased that lot, that would be your best idea for a potential buyer.
Listen, Franklin, I think there's so much more we need to uncover. And here's what I'm going to do. I know it took us a while to be able to do this, and we've been on here for almost an hour now. I appreciate your time. What you've already shared is golden. That's should help a lot of people. What I want to do is get you inside our Facebook group. If you guys are not in our Facebook group, go on to Facebook, look up Shut Up and Invest in the group section and join our group. It's completely free. Let's set up and schedule a time whenever you have free time. And why don't we do like an actual case study of one of the deals you've got now or you're working on, break it down. Maybe we do it at night when you're home and you're at your computer with your Wi-Fi set up so that we got something clear. And let's actually take a deal from A to Z, screen share, and I really break it down together. That way our network sees how you actually see a deal, what you do the homework and the research on, how you skip trace, what you're looking on, the zoning, etc. We'll ask questions. We'll break down one full deal live, and then we'll make sure with your contact info, you're in the group, and have people start connecting with you with their land deals. How's that sound?
Most definitely, I'm down. I'm down for the get down. Let's make it happen.
All right, Joe Ritchie agrees right there. He says that would be dope. We got Gerard here saying he finally caught it. Best podcast in the nation. We appreciate you, Gerard. Simple cash offer. Giving a shout out. All right, we got people liking the idea, my friend. I think we got to set that on the calendar. Maybe an evening. What's easier for you?
Yeah, we could do that. The evening will probably be best. You know, something maybe anytime after 5. We could probably make that happen.
Perfect. Jay, you got anything before we let Franklin get back to the hustle?
Hey man, just appreciate you coming on. I think it's very important, you know, the information you gave, because everybody's trying to find a niche, right? Because we all know if you're out there marketing for wholesale deals, everyone's doing it right now. Every seller's getting bombarded with texts and cold calls, right? So if you kind of find a niche market, which vacant land is a niche, right? You can kind of help some people out get their first deal or kind of find their way. And like you said before, you don't have to go out there and make 1,000 phone calls, right? You know what your niche is. You can identify, right, these properties of land, they might have a lien or whatever on them, and just kind of focus on that. So I think it's great information that you gave us today, and look forward to doing this more.
All right, most definitely, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to be on here, man.
Listen, you're killing the game, and I know you sent me a bunch of lot deals because I got a lot buyers, so we got to connect on that. And let's see if we can set something up within the next 2 weeks and do that breakdown of a live deal on a lot, flipping land. It is definitely something you can do all across the nation, and Franklin is the man to contact. He'll walk you through it. He'll definitely partner with you on it, and that's the whole point of this podcast. So, as always, shut up and invest.
Shut up and invest. All right, guys.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.